Hello everyone. Today I wanted to talk to you about beginnings, specifically where to begin when you first start working leather in terms of the tools that you'll need to get the job done. I've generally heard two different philosophies when it comes to beginner's tools. The first is that you should just start with whatever you can get your hands on. The second is that you should buy a high quality tool so that you can do the job right. And I think there's truth in both of these and a bit of falsehood in both of these. On the one hand, it can be hard to do good work with poor tools. On the other hand, the best tools will be meaningless if you don't have the skills. My advice is to go for tools that are good quality, but that aren't so expensive that you'll break the bank. If you're just starting out with a hobby, you don't know if you're going to stick with it or not. And if you go out and buy a bunch of expensive tools only to find that you don't enjoy leatherworking, then that's a pretty big hole in your wallet to bear. On the other hand, while you certainly can start with anything that you have at hand, and I've certainly done that, having improper tools or poorly made ones can not only affect the quality of your work, but also put you at risk of injury. You want to have things that will serve you well and function properly. Now, when it comes to the first tools that you'll want to use, I've arrayed several things out in front, as you can see here, that I think are most important. First of all, you're going to want a knife. When you get leather, you're going to need to be able to cut it. Now, my first knife was this one right here, and there's a bit of a lesson in this and why it isn't out with the other tools. When I first went to a leatherworking shop, I bought my first tools, and I needed a knife, and I was told that that knife was a very good one. And indeed, it's quite sharp, it's very comfortable in the hand, and if you look at it, you can see it has a rather nice pattern on it. It was a good bit expensive, around $100, but I didn't know anything about how to use it. And even to this day, knowing more that I don't even know what kind of knife this actually is. I don't actually know how you're supposed to use it, and quite honestly, it doesn't do everything for me that this head knife does. I bought it because it was suggested to me, and maybe that was a good decision, but I can't ignore the fact that probably it was recommended to me because it was expensive, and it was a good sale for the shop. So that's a bit of a lesson to you, something to look out for. Now, you can start with something as simple as an Exacto knife, because really what you want is just to cut the leather out. I think, in my opinion, springing for a head knife is a good idea. This one was, if I remember correctly, about $90, and it served me quite well for several years. It does everything I hoped the other knife would do, and more. It's relatively easy to learn how to use. I showed you all how I use it in a previous video, and if you take good care of it, keep it sharp, it'll last you a good long time. Now, you can cut out all of your leather just using that, but it also is a good idea to have some leather shears. This is the first and only pair I've ever bought, and when I'm cutting out leather to use from a side, I use these. You don't use it for fine shaping or anything like that. I suppose you could, but for my taste, they're a bit clumsy, but they're quite strong and you can cut through good, thick leather with them. So that's very useful. And then sometimes it's a lot easier than trying to cut out what I want with the knife to begin with. You're also going to want a leather punch. This isn't the original I got. The original broke, and I ordered this one online. But it has served me well ever since. I use this to make the lacing holes that you can see on several of the band braces and cuffs that I make. So that's another important tool. That was what I started with. Just those few tools and a cutting board from my kitchen to cut leather on. As you might have seen, I've since upgraded to using rubber mats, which are quite nice, but I've also seen people work on wood. Basically, you can cut on anything that will protect your work surface, because you don't want to cut up your work surface or damage your knives. After that, you're going to want some thread. While there are certainly things you can do without stitching, eventually, to make more complex works of leather, you're going to want to sew things together. And to that end, you're going to want some thread an awl, and some needles. Leatherworking needles tend to be thicker, more sturdy than sewing needles. When I first started out, I used some that had very large eyes on them, which is nice for a beginner, but those eyes tend to break. As you get more experienced, you might want to get some saddle stitching needles that have smaller eyes, so they're less prone to breaking, and by then you might have more experience threading them, so it won't be as hard. Now you might ask yourself, why don't I have any needles put out here? Well, that's because personally, I use boar's bristle. I find it to be incredibly versatile, very useful. It's flexible, so it can go through holes very easily. But we're here to talk about beginners, and boar's bristles are not something that you want to do as a beginner. And lastly, something to measure with. This is incredibly important. I didn't buy it. I actually got it from family. But you'll want to be able to take your own measurements and to measure out what you're going to be working on. It's good to have a tape measure so you can measure on human bodies, and it doesn't hurt to have a solid ruler so that you can work out your patterns on paper, assuming you're not doing them digitally. I do mine digitally just because it's easy to store and easy to edit and easy to work with, but it's more traditional to do your patterns out on paper. There are a lot more tools that you can use when it comes to leatherworking, but just getting started, these basic tools will see you straight. It's all about practice, doing research, finding out what you need for the project that you want to do. But for very basic things like leather cuffs, vambraces, even things like bags and pouches, these tools will see you through. So get out there, give it a try, see if you like it. You might have a really good time. I'd like to say a quick thank you to all my patrons out there. If you like my videos, please consider going and giving me some support there so I can continue to make more. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell so you get notifications for more leatherworking and, in the future, metalworking videos. Until then, stay safe and happy crafting.